So, welcome to another edition of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. I have Mr. Michael King. He's the author of Tribe of Men, therapist, licensed clinical social worker. King, thanks for being here, man. How you doing?
Hey, Andrews, man, salute. I'm grateful to be here, man. I'm really grateful to be a part of this.
I appreciate you being here, man. I've known you for, I was just doing the math, man. It's going to be almost 15 years since I've known you. And so I know your story a little bit, and that's why I asked you to come on the show, man, because I think it's a beautiful story that you can share about your family, about your experiences, growing up in America, being born in America to immigrant parents. And I want you to kind of share that story, man. Tell us, like, where your parents are from and kind of, what your experience was like, being a American-born child to immigrant parents.
So my parents are from the island of Trinidad, right?
Hmm.
The Port of Spain, and particularly the Fort George area and part of St. James.
Hmm.
And yeah, they met in Trinidad, and so they met as teens, right? Families didn't live too far apart from each other, and so that's how they initially met, and how they got here was interesting. So my dad, used to play pan. Right? Steel pan was the Trinidad national instrument. It's also something I like to do to help keep the culture alive in my life. But
Right.
around that time, back in the '60s, this is like '68. No, maybe mid '60s, I would say. He played for a group called Pan Am, which was they were also part of the National Steel Band, and they did tours. And so what happened is they played in Radio City Music Hall, like back in the days, and around that time, a lot of the guys they stayed in America. And in order to get citizenship, though, my dad and other guys as well, they actually joined the army. And,
Mm.
Vietnam was going on around that time. And so my dad was one of the brave souls that did that. And he actually did and completed 3 tours.
Wow.
And, yep, he came back, I guess, around in the late 60s, early 70, 1970, and brought my mom up in and then they moved to the DC area, and
Hmm.
they got married in '72, and
Okay.
I was here in '74.
Okay.
Yeah, so I always admired my dad for that, because a lot of times a lot of guys when they leave, the Caribbean, and they come to the States, they seem to kind of forget about back home
Hmm.
sometimes, but he didn't, man. My mom came up when she was 18. She was like two
Yeah.
years younger than him,
Hmm.
and yeah, moved to DC, and that's where I was born at Freedman Hospital, which is
Okay.
now I believe it's called Howard University Hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're a
Mhm.
proud Washingtonian, man. That's what's up.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
Grew up in DC. Then we moved, like a lot of folks did. We moved to like Landover, which was like
Hmm.
2 miles away from. I grew up oh my goodness, in the Deanwood side, northeast DC,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we moved to Landover.
Okay. So tell me, man, what was it like having parents who didn't attend K through 12 in America, but now they have a child, right? Their first child, and they're getting ready to sort of shepherd you through this new American school system. What was it like for them? What was it like for you going through that experience?
Well, like most immigrant parents, they really instilled like education in me, right?
Hmm.
And their backgrounds wasn't really highly educated, right? My
Hmm.
dad was a trade as a tailor. He was a master tailor, and
Hmm.
he did that for many years after getting out of the army. My
Hmm.
mom was a secretary at Gallaudet
Hmm.
University in the
Hmm.
Department of Administration and Supervision for many years, and she
Hmm.
actually retired from that job. Um, but education was like really big. Like, I remember in elementary school, particularly, it was a challenge too, right? Because they
Yeah.
were like, like on me, on me, on me. And so the early years of education, sometimes homework sessions were like nightmares. Like, it was not easy.
Right,
It
right.
wasn't even. My mom was the heavy in that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then so, like, yeah, it wasn't easy, but I did, and they didn't really know much about the American education system. They,
Hmm.
like most immigrants, They didn't really have the only plan was you come to America, you're gonna go to a better school, you're gonna go to college. It
Yeah.
really wasn't like, you know, anything more. But over the years in my initial elementary school experience, it was a good experience.
Hmm.
Um, I think the biggest adjustments I had was when being like Caribbean and in
Hmm.
Landover, where I grew up,
Hmm.
it wasn't a lot of Caribbean families. Like,
Right, right, right.
yeah, it's not like, if we in Brooklyn or even
Yeah.
parts of DC where there's a large immigrant and Caribbean population.
Hmm.
So actually, man, I took a lot of heat for being like different, even though I
Yeah.
was just as black as the next person here,
Right.
to be like Caribbean.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, back then everybody thought it was African, right? So I've
Yeah.
heard like, it was a little rough, right?
Yeah.
But I thank God for a couple things. One, like, I had some good friends, right? Who were cool. Also has athletic talent, and I was good with my hands. So like,
Hmm.
if I needed to, like, you know, there was a time where I did get kind of picked on them because I was different. You
Right.
know, my parents said they played the music, the soca music, and then
Yeah.
my friends would hear it. They'd be like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
And it's like, now the jokes would start, right?
Right, right,
So
right.
after a while, either sometimes you had to fight to stop it. I mean, I
Yeah.
had to. Let me tell you, it was my experience. Like, I had to,
Right,
like,
right.
what I'm saying, I had to get in some altercations, right?
Right, right.
But I was also good at sports too. So then I realized, I was like, man, good at sports, and like, when it's time to select people for teams, whether it's at that time basketball or football,
Yeah.
I was always one of the first kids picked. So
Right.
I realized, I was like, wow, okay, sports keep people off my back.
Yeah.
I could fight. That keep people
Yeah.
off my back, right? And I
Right,
was
right,
a
right.
quiet kid, didn't
Yeah.
really, I wasn't causing trouble, but I usually, I wasn't letting people pick on me,
Right.
right? So in terms of like academically or socially, that's I had to learn to adjust.
Hmm.
Academically, though, I think the way my mom and my dad like kind of instilled the importance of education, I didn't realize, like, I was doing well in school, right?
Hmm.
And I was excelling. Like back then, I realized, I was like, man, I'm not in any classes with any of my friends from my neighborhood. And I was like, wondering why. So then I realized they had me like in the tag or the class, like right there below tag, and all my other buddies was like in special ed. I was like,
Right.
wow, So I did. So I started recognizing the difference
Right.
in how they start to mix and match classes.
Right. Almost like
My
tracks, the different tracks that exist.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
My parents didn't know anything about that.
Right.
Matter of fact, it was a time in elementary, probably like fourth or fifth grade, where the teacher she gave me this letter to give to my mom. And I thought it was about tag. And she was like, this is something good. We want to get you, in this program. And I was like, I gave it to my mom, but because she didn't really know what the system was like, she didn't
Yeah.
trust it. So
Yeah.
she was like, nah, you're not doing that. And I was like,
Yeah.
Mom, I think this is a good thing. Like, this
Right.
is
Right.
good. It's like
Yeah.
tag.
Yeah.
And she just did not trust it.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. So over the course of my elementary years and middle school years, I had to learn, because they gave me a good foundation, and my mom was kind of hard on me with this piece. I learned, I was like, if I keep my grades up, I can keep her off my back,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I basically did that. In probably middle school and all up to high school, I was pretty much self sufficient. I
Mhm.
knew the assignments I needed to do, and I would get it done. And as long as
Right.
I bring home good grades, I can
Yeah.
keep my mother off my back. My
Yeah.
dad was cool breeze the whole
Yeah.
time. He was like,
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't until when I got to college and I wanted to study something that he didn't think that was challenging enough. He actually
Yeah.
sat me down and was like, "Nah, I think you need to study something a bit more challenging. I think you need to add business into that." Because
Yeah.
I went to school initially to study PE, right? I
Right.
wanted to be like a sports lawyer. So I was like, "Look, man, I worked hard for these 12 years.
Yeah.
I didn't have a plan."
Yeah.
But after my dad talked to me, man, he was like, "Man, I didn't go to Vietnam, come back, get citizenship, try to make this better life for you just to study PE."
Yeah.
He was like, you need to like tighten up. You need to
He,
add.
he need to step it up.
Yeah, yeah, He did, and I was surprised because
Yeah.
again, he was cool breeze all
Yeah.
this time.
Right. Whole T.
So then, yeah, he's cooling, right? So I added business administration to it, right?
Yeah.
So I did have PE and business administration, do a degree, and after after college, man, I ended up working for a few years, and I was actually starting teaching, and I was a PE teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I found out about social work because I was a PE teacher at a special education school. So
Mm-hmm.
the kids was receiving related services,
Mm-hmm.
individual therapy, group therapy, and then I met a mentor. It was two mentors. Like
Mm-hmm.
one lady was Dr. Kathy Larner,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was a white lady,
Mm-hmm.
old white lady. You wouldn't even think. And then it was another a brother Carr who was a clinician, a
Mm-hmm.
therapist, and they were like, I think you would be a good therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would watch my mannerisms, watch how I engage with students and parents and staff, and they got me in the direction of therapy. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
grow up wanting to be a therapist, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
found me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
so then I
that.
went to Howard
Yeah.
School of Social Work, you know, and that
Yeah.
was back in 2001.
Yeah. Yeah. And the rest is history. But let's circle back real quick. So
Okay.
you're in high school, right? You went to Largo.
Largo High School.
Right, went to Largo High School. So you're in Largo, right? You've done pretty well. Elementary school, middle school. You get to Largo. So as you get to high school, being like the first child, listen, you're the first child that your parents have in America who's actually going into high school, into a system that they themselves haven't experienced, right? So as you're going into high school, you're a pretty good student. As you're going through high school, and you know in your mind that college is the next step after high school. Like, are you like, how do you get to the point where you're like, I'm thinking about studying PE? Like, where does that come from? And what was that process like in making that decision?
Well, for me, it was always the athlete in me. Like
Mm-hmm.
soccer was my main sport, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Back in those times, soccer wasn't a popular sport, especially in my
Right.
community, right?
Right.
But I
Right.
played, I was on travel teams, and I knew that I wanted athletics to be a part of my career. Like
Gotcha.
I wanted to go into that field. If I
Yeah.
wasn't going to be a pro athlete, I wanted to be a sports agent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't. So in school, in high school, that they had started the magnet programs in that
Mm-hmm.
particular those in that season of time. And at Largo, we had a law and public policy like magnet program, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's the track that I was on at Largo. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was good. It got me. We did trips to Annapolis, to the state capitol, to see the
Mm-hmm.
state legislators, do their policies, discussions, and debates. I was like, okay, all right. So then the magnet school, and actually this teacher named Miss Henry, who was in charge of the law and public policy magnet program. She was amazing, right? She made education fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's I decided like PE because I like sports, and then I was in a law magnet program.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, let's try to do that in college, right?
Right.
Now as
Right.
life kind of unfolds, I went different directions, but I was first of all, I didn't think I was going to go to college. Let me double back a bit though, because when I was my sophomore year, I didn't think I was going to go to college. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I had good grades and everything, but I was
Right.
like, I really didn't have a direction. And at one point in time, I was like talking to my dad around that time. I'm like, man, I think I want to go to the military,
Mm-hmm.
right? And once again, my dad was a cool, dude, but he didn't really speak too much. Like
Yeah.
he let me give me a lot of leeway, but it was certain times that I can always remember when he was like, when he spoke his mind and he was
Yeah.
like, wanted to help redirect me, he let it be known. So
Mm-hmm.
when I said military, he was like, I mean, he got like, no, 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 no. And I was
Yeah.
like, Dad, what you think? I'm scared? I'm like, I'm not scared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's I think it's honorable.
Yeah.
But then again, he saw me again. He's like, I did all that, so
Yeah.
you don't have to,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now I think if I would have really pressed it, he would have. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he would have. He
You'd
would
have
have followed
relented.
my lead. Yeah, he would have.
Mm-hmm.
But the way he spoke to me about like the sacrifices he made to help me be where I'm at now and how he wanted better, I was like, wow, okay, all right, I'm going to go to I will go to college,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And let me ask you a question. So your understanding of your dad's military service at that point, as a 10th grader in high school, like what are you thinking that it is versus what it really was? You know what I mean? So like as a because 10th grade you're 14, 15, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're probably pushing 16. And
Mm-hmm.
so you know that your dad was in the military. You know your dad did 3 tours. So in your mind as a 15-year-old, you're
Yeah,
thinking, okay, this is what it is, not
I
really realizing sort of like a lot of the traumatic experiences that your dad may have had that you just are not aware of at 15, that he's trying to
yeah,
now maybe shield you from.
I knew that he wanted citizenship, right? And that was
Hmm.
a pathway to citizenship. People made it
Right.
back, they
Hmm.
got their citizenship,
Right.
right?
Here you go.
But I didn't know that. I mean, I just thought, hey, to be a citizen, right?
Yeah.
Cool. But I wasn't thinking of things he was trying to shield me from that
Hmm.
experience, right?
Hmm.
Um, I just like, yeah, he got a citizenship. He come, and he's good. He's a citizen now. That's something he wanted to do. But when he started talking about the sacrifice he made, like for me, so I can like have like a better life, I was
Hmm.
like, oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
that I got it.
It clicked
So
for you.
yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
clicked. So I was like, okay, I'll go to college,
Yeah.
right? I'll go to college. I know, around that time, honestly, you know, I did good and I did enough, but
Hmm.
I wasn't like striving to be like the 4.0 and
Right.
4.5 GPA.
Right.
I wasn't like that.
Right.
I
Right.
played my sports. I had
Hmm.
my friends,
Yeah.
right? I got good grades. I know that kid kept my mother off my back,
Right.
be like and it made them happy. So
Yeah.
I was cool,
Yeah. You had a formula.
Yeah, that was my formula, keep
Hmm.
my grades up,
Yeah.
and then I could play sports, keep my parents off my back, and live my high school life.
And the reason I asked you that is because essentially the thing that you were interested in, right, during high school and even elementary school, athletics, you saw, a lot of your identity in sports and your athletic ability. And so you were actually pursuing the thing that you were interested in. You know what I mean? Because when you were going into college and you're like, hey, I want to, become either a sports agent, a sports, and that led you down to becoming a physical education, teacher. That in a sense is you sort of like standing on your principle of this is what I enjoy, this is what I'm interested in, and I'm going to follow this path. You know what I mean? Which ultimately led you to where you are.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It led to other opportunities that actually opened me up to therapy and being a
yeah.
therapist and actually, finding my purpose with that, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
living life like after college, living life, getting married, having kids, going through a divorce
Hmm.
and building back up life,
Hmm.
really I found my purpose like after all that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So yeah. But
yeah.
it was like a sequential, I think
Hmm.
divine order. I thank
Hmm.
God for because I could have gone astray many a times, right?
Right.
But it was like people that were in my life, people who looked like me and people who didn't look like me,
Hmm.
but they were very helpful and a very important part of helping me get to where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the probably two most important people would be your parents, right? Because they kind of gave you this grounding
Yeah.
that allowed you to kind of, number one, advocate for yourself, and number
Mhm.
two, sort of like move through, life in America with a certain level of confidence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
a lot of that you kind of built on your own from, just like the struggles and the challenges that you had, being the child of immigrants. But I feel like that's still a stabilizing force that, was able to carry you, to where you are, right?
Definitely.
So going back to professionally, you kind of finding your way, into becoming a licensed clinical social worker, and the process that it took from being a PE teacher to having these two mentors who kind of helped to support you, urge you to explore this option. So what drew you to that? I mean, they once they told you that, hey, this is, we think you'd be good for this. What was the next step that you took that that you're like, okay, after you processed everything, you're like, okay, let me give this thing a shot.
Yeah, so like Dr. Lerner particularly like really encouraged me to apply.
Hmm.
She was like, "I'll write you recommendations, apply." And then Brother Carr, he the same thing. So then, because I always had like a desire to want to help people, right?
Hmm.
Whether it was through physical education and helping them increase their fitness literacy, you
Hmm.
know, fitness levels,
Hmm.
strength and flexibility and all that and cardio, right?
Yeah.
That was one thing. But like I always wanted to kind of help people like be better or or work through challenges. That's something that's kind of always been in me. So when I saw like what Brother Carr was doing, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Because actually, innately, naturally, like over the course of my years, even in school, like middle school, high school, like people used to always tell me stuff. And
Hmm.
they used to say, like, man, I ain't never tell anybody that, or I feel comfortable talking to you. And
Right.
I wasn't thinking anything of it. I didn't know that those were good skills for engagement, and then rapport building.
Hmm.
Like those are like beginning, really foundations of some really good clinical skills.
Hmm.
So then I listened to Dr. Larner. She basically gave me amazing recommendation and got me, helped me get in. I applied to Howard. Um, and then the people I met there during my experience, Dean Porter, oh my gosh, and there's another dean, the head of the school at that time, who was another alpha. He really brought me in, and then they helped me see like the clinical side of social work and how it can be empowering and impactful to the community, right?
Yeah.
Some and then they actually end up helping me get. I got a graduate assistantship through there, right? So sometimes, like when God be making these ways, like resources kind of happen and provide.
Yeah.
He provides as well.
Yeah.
So even though I had a student loan my first year,
Mhm.
meeting people during that first year of school, I ended up getting a graduate assistantship the next year, and I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, what I mean? Paid for it, and I
Yeah.
had a little money in my pocket with a job at the computer lab.
Yeah.
So I was like, when things started lining up and then resources started providing and then I felt the shift to move in that direction where I just followed the lead in the shift,
Yeah.
from the feeling I had. And it's been a great decision, you know. That was over 20 years ago, but I don't regret it, you know. It
Yeah.
took me yeah, it's helping me actually use the skills that God gave me to help others. And so that's what I like about it the most.
Okay. No, no, I love that, man. And what I love about what you just said is when things started to line up and you saw that alignment, you essentially just embraced it, right? You were like, okay, this is actually, you know, turning out to be something that I enjoy, that I'm fully embracing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I wanted to be like, you want to be so many other things, but like I said,
Yeah.
this therapy and clinical social work found me, and
Hmm.
and I'm thankful that it did.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
that's awesome, man. It's not something again, you're sitting in Largo, getting ready to go off to college. This is nowhere on your radar.
No,
You know what I
I wanted
mean?
to be
But
an
you,
athlete,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or an agent, one of them
yeah,
two.
absolutely. But
Yeah,
again, that you're operating sort of in your zone of genius, right? Because you're in the sports. Sports is something you enjoy. It's a strong interest of yours. So you're like, all right, let me just continue along that way, and then that eventually is what leads you to where you are. Where do you feel like this is your calling or your purpose
yeah,
or part of
yeah.
it?
No, no, no. I feel like it is right
Hmm.
now. Let me just say this: I didn't start off with it. Like even after I finished school in Howard and started into the social work field in in my younger 30s, I wasn't. I didn't know that. Yeah, I'm in my purpose. I knew I was helping people, and that was cool. But I still had some other ambitions that were outside of social work
Hmm.
that actually they never really worked out a little bit. Like I was real estate investing. I was doing home inspection. I had like a lot of side gigs and hustles, right?
Right, right,
That
right.
I thought would turn into fruitful careers, but it were great experiences because it helped me really recognize, okay, what I don't want to do. I thought I liked
Mm,
it, but nah, I don't
yeah,
like it. So
yeah.
then, I, then I was just kind of doing social work. But then as life continues to life,
Hmm.
you married, kids come,
Yeah.
you start to live that life and you're working, right? I experienced a divorce, went through that. So then it was after that where I really started finding my niche and purpose within the social work space and mental health space.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of some of the lessons I learned about me and things that I needed to like unlearn
Hmm.
and deal with like post divorce kind of
Hmm.
inspired me to not only author a book but help like really find a lane and niche with working with men's mental health, even though
Hmm.
I do work with more than just men. But I started after divorce focusing just on men, but it has opened up to adolescents and some women as well. And it went from private practice to now I'm in uh, actually in a great space at Total Healthcare, which
Hmm.
is FQHC, which means a federally qualified health clinic
Hmm.
in Baltimore City, right?
Hmm.
Serving people who are uninsured or Medicaid, Medicare, like really like deep rooted in the community, in underserved communities with
Right.
marginalized people. Um, but I feel like, Total Healthcare is a light in the community, providing medical, dental, as well as mental health services. And I'm a
Hmm.
part of that mental health branch that we're
Right.
helping people.
No, that's really cool, man. I think from what I'm hearing you say, from you going to Howard, like getting your master's in social work, right? It and at that time, if I'm thinking about it, when you talk about home inspection and in real estate investing and all that stuff, I think that was also the time, the era, right? That's like the big real estate boom, all that stuff is going on. So
Hmm.
it's like, all right, this opportunity is also here, which kind of may have taken your eyes off of how expansive social work is, right? Because it's also just like this is like your introduction to social work. And I think now you're in a space where you're like, wow, I could really make a huge impact in something that's really fulfilling for me.
Yeah, yeah. Because around those times, I had a lot of ambitions, kind of chasing other things, but I
Yeah,
kind of lost sight of what I lost a little sight chasing
yeah,
different
yeah.
opportunities. Oh, maybe that opportunity's for me, that opportunity,
Hmm.
but really
Yeah,
there weren't. And some things kind of went neglected. Like,
yeah,
I might not have been the most available husband or
yeah,
dad that I was because I
yeah,
was out here grinding, right?
yeah.
So a lot of the lessons I learned uh, during those earlier years in my life, the 30s, right,
Hmm.
and into my 40s, right, helps me bring a lot of life experience to my clinical space now. Right now, I'm
Right,
50. I'm
right,
like,
right.
hey, not only do I have like the clinical, book knowledge to help people therapeutically, but I bring a lot of life experience and knowledge to this space as well.
Yeah,
So it's everything that I've been through has been for a purpose, right?
yeah.
But ultimately, I feel like after going through the struggles and after going through challenges and chasing stuff that ultimately was no good for me, I found my purpose now in my lane, and I know that I'm very content where I am, and will continue to like serve the community, serve my kids, and
Mhm.
co-parent with my ex, and just But in this
Yeah.
season of life, man, I'm really grateful for all the lessons that I've learned.
Okay, no, that's really awesome, man. So we started off with the first two P's, right? We talked about the personal side, we looked at the professional side. Now we got to get into the parenting side. So how have all these experiences from, being a child of immigrant parents, going through the school system, going to college, going to graduate school, finding your way professionally, how have all these experiences, sort of helped you and shaped you into being the best parent you can be?
Well, it's definitely helped me help my kids. Like right now, I have a 19-year-old. She's a sophomore at Morgan State University studying
Hmm.
nursing, and I have a sophomore in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and he's doing well. He does sports. They both do sports and they do well in school. But
Mm-hmm.
really, how has it my experiences have helped me be supportive of them all throughout their education career. You know, being present, understanding what the administration, what the teachers are talking about, the
Mm-hmm.
challenges with like learning like new curriculums, being
Mm-hmm.
able to help them. You know, but also keeping them, trying to expose them to different opportunities that the
Mm-hmm.
school system provides. That's something that me and their mom really took serious, right? When they,
Mm-hmm.
especially in their younger years, helping to lay a foundation of good study habits,
Mm-hmm.
helping them be exposing them to different disciplines so they can be like well rounded. And maybe by high school, we say, all right, maybe now you can start to try to target in on something that you like. But our goal is just to like to expose you to different, whether it's STEM, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's athletics, whether it's art, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to develop a well-rounded person, young person. So
Yeah.
now, and also helping them learn how to be like self-sufficient. Like we never really, I'm really grateful because I never really had to crack whips on them to like study or get your grades up. Like um my daughter, like I think it's beautiful, like having her first because she innately was like a hard worker,
Yeah.
right? And like she has a self-discipline, and my son kind of follows her lead. But
Mm-hmm.
so as a parent helping them through school, just wanted them, instead of giving them answers,
Mm-hmm.
asking them open-ended questions, help to see like what are your thoughts, right? Like instead of trying to solve the problems for them right away, I'm like, okay, what did you first do? Help me understand what you did, or what are your thoughts, or what did you try first?
Mm-hmm.
And helping them, trying to develop problem solving skills, helping
Mm-hmm.
them develop like study habits and a schedule,
Mm-hmm.
to balance their life, like fun, academics,
Yeah.
sports and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, from my experiences, that really helped me help them having
Yeah.
a good academic experience in school.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. So, based on a lot of the things that you exposed them to, right, as they were coming up, especially your oldest child, your daughter, um, a lot of the experiences that you exposed them to, which of those experiences you think, for both of them, but you can speak more so about your oldest, you think they sort of, lean too early, and you can kind of see how, like over time, it's become, you know, um, like a bigger interest for them. Similar to how you came up and, you found like sports helped you with your identity, and then you kind of use sports to kind of, get you where you need to go. What would something similar be for, for your daughter and also for your son that they kind of gravitated too early that you exposed them to?
Well, my son is still kind of exploring, right? Like
Hmm.
he does like sports, and right now he's to be like, hey, I want to be a pro athlete. So I'm like, okay, all right, I'm not a dream killer,
Right.
right? But I try to be supportive and encourage a well-roundedness. So all right, so um, but he's finding his way, right? So whether it's the athlete or whether it's the athletic trainer or whether it's a coach, because he has a lot of great sports knowledge as well, or whether it's an agent, right? Trying to let him see that it's bigger than just the athlete.
Mhm.
Um, my daughter, I, she, well, she kind of knew what even in high school, she knew she wanted to be a nurse,
Oh, wow.
right?
Okay.
So she kind of knew she wanted to be a nurse. Now we do have some people in the family that was nurses, right?
Okay.
But I'm not really sure how she picked up on that.
Yeah.
Um, but it actually, I think, sports kind of helped her find it that way.
Mhm.
With her, she had an opportunity to attend like St. John's College High School, and then through there and that experience, she met people from the Black Nurses Association in DC, and they started taking a liking to her, gave her scholarships, and then as she applied to Morgan, she's entering the nursing program, and then we had some family that went to Morgan and studied nursing, so then that
Yeah.
kind of helped as well. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I, she is truly divine because her motivation and like I don't know how she came up with nursing,
Yeah.
but that was just innate within her, you know.
That's pretty cool, man. So one thing we didn't touch on is your younger sibling, right? So you were kind of the
Mm.
first child to go through the system. So, and I'm not sure what the age gap is between you. I can't remember what the
It's
age
a
gap
big
is
gap.
between you and your brother. It's a big gap,
It's
right?
a big gap, yeah.
Yeah. So how were you able to sort of help your younger brother, after being the first one to go through the system, the school system, to kind of help, because you kind of could tell him, these are the things that you need to look out for as you get to middle school, as you get to high school. You know what I mean? And a lot of things that you would have to help prepare him for might be things outside of school, right? Like how to navigate things in the
Yeah.
neighborhood, stuff like that. So what was, talk about that a little bit about how you helped your younger brother out
So
and
his
what the
experience
relationship is
growing
like.
up was a lot different than my
Okay.
experience. Like,
Gotcha.
so there's a 15-year gap between
Okay.
us.
Yeah.
So by the time like, so again, my dad and my mom really worked hard. So we moved from Landover, right? It was a little
Mhm.
bit more hood-ish to
Yeah.
Upper Marlboro, which was
Hmm.
like suburbs, like kind of night
Right.
and day,
Right.
right? So my brother grew up in Upper Marlboro Springs,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
and being 15 years different in
Yeah.
terms of apart.
Yeah.
My thing was earlier initially when he was younger, I was more like it was harder to get like an older brother feel because we were so big. Like I remember like when I was at Towson, that's when I went to undergrad. It'd be some weekends I would bring him up. He was like 3 years old, right? I
Yeah.
would bring him up and he would stay with me for the weekend. I try to expose him to like college,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you know, then when he was younger, and then when I got out of school, I was coaching his soccer teams,
Yeah.
right? Um, so, but I always try to it was a balance because like my dad started getting sick around that time, and so I was more like a big brother father like figure, right?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And then but I always check with him, help make sure school was important. Around that time, my mom was older, so she eased up a lot. She was
Yeah.
not as intense as she was with me as
Right.
she was with him.
Yeah.
Um, but he was also a good student.
Mhm.
Definitely knows the value of education. Um, in high school, he graduated from Largo High School as well, um, and he went to. So I just tried to give him. It was a challenge because because it was a big age difference. You know, I could tell him, hey, you should need to do this, do that, do this, but he's also like 15.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, he wants to kind of make decisions himself.
Right.
So,
Right.
so I recognize like I just can't tell him do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, do this,
Right.
because he's not really, I don't really want him to be a robot, but I
Yeah.
do want to kind of hip him to the game or,
Right.
trying to help him start to map out stuff.
Yeah.
So, after high school, he went on to study engineering, right? And he ultimately graduated from Morgan in engineering. And now that he's older, like 35, we're married and kids now, we have like more of like a brotherly relationship with even though there's an age difference, but
Yeah.
we can more so talk about like a lot of common things in life. But I even still to this day,
Yeah.
I have to remember like he gonna make his mistakes. I could tell him things to avoid, but I could be more like an advisor because I'm not his dad,
Yeah.
right? And I want to
Yeah.
be his big brother. And so, I try to help navigate him, but not like totally tell him what to do or did be like upset or disappointed if he makes a decision on his own. I just always wanted to let him know that he's supported,
Hmm.
and I love him,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, he has to learn some lessons.
Yeah.
I can't save him from the hard stuff, right?
Right. 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 You just help them out when you can. So
Yeah.
we're about to wrap it up, man. Tell us real
Okay.
quickly about the book, man. Tribe of Men. What was the motivation for penning this prose?
Uh, so the motivation was again after I went through a divorce, I started really reflecting on me, like my mindset, my attitude, not just things that during marriage, but from before I was married, right? So Tribe of Men is a faith-based book, talking about men's mental health, healthy masculinity. So if I look at it as a self-help tool And if you want to start to do some therapeutic work on yourself, and then this can like prepare you for if like, okay, if I need some more, I mean, I need to go into a therapist's office,
Hmm.
then at least I'm going into the therapist's office have already having done some work on me. Yeah, so it's a self-help book. It's a nice tool. It's a simple read, but it's powerful because it has some exercises that go along with it and along with the chapters in it.
Hmm.
And again, it's a book about wellness, mental health, and spirituality.
Awesome, man. So, King, thank you
Yes,
so much,
sir.
man, for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate you, bro. You know, you're like a brother to me, man. So, I thank you for sharing your story with us. And thank you all for joining us on another episode of the Immigrant Education Collaborative Podcast. See you next time.